lovely to see you, Wendy. It's been a while since I spent a bit of time in
Thank you, Danny.
the studio up in Sydney when you had that exhibition at MPAG a couple of years.
Yes, yes. Well, it sounded going on and off, but yes, it is a while since we were together. And of course, I had my big show in Mornington Peninsula.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, which I'm sure a lot of our viewers have fond memories of coming to visit. How are you? How's this year been for you? What a crazy and unpredictable and uncertain year we've had.
Well, look, it's actually been okay for me. I mean, it's extraordinary that we're living in a situation where it has actually affected everyone. Some people a bit, and some people devastating. Um, for me, as I think many artists, it's not so bad because I'm in here right now. I'm in my studio. I'm in here anyway, and I'm always in here. Um, my life didn't change that much, except that I am a big traveller, and I haven't been able to travel. But I've got an exhibition on right now in Sydney, and I had another show, and I've had a lot of things happen. I worked on a huge mural in Sydney too, so it's actually been quite busy, and I've got away with it pretty well, I think.
Yeah, well, it's been amazing to see your artistic output during this year, especially working on that huge mural that you did, but also the recent show. That looks stunning, which also has quite a bit of wall
Thank you.
work as well. Tell us about the mural. How did that come about?
Yes, well, I'll tell you what some of the things I've been doing. There's a mural in Newtown in inner Sydney called the Women's Empowerment Mural, and I was contacted through the local council here, Inner West Council, who have a program, which I think they're the only place in Sydney that has this. In Melbourne, you have it, so it is in Victoria, and I do think, dare I say, that you're a bit more ahead in these things in Victoria. This program, which is where they matched, called Perfect Match, they link an artist, and I really like my work and like the idea of there being a mural on their wall. What's really interesting is that the subject is women's empowerment, which is something that they really love too. And they are two men, a couple who are two men, and are the father of two boys, which I think is really lovely. So it's not like they're bringing up girls, they're bringing up boys to be aware of treating everybody equally and with respect. So that was a lovely thing. And it's painted all around the walls of this house, it's obviously public, just in Newtown, just off the main road. And that was actually, a really lovely experience. And if anyone, look, when you can come up to Sydney and go and see that. But, the other thing that actually what made them think of asking me, these friends of mine, was that I had made a folding book. It's an artist book where I painted, called Corona Diary, which was a book of when we in Sydney were in lockdown, and when you can't go out, even though I'm lucky that I'm in my studio now, which I can show you, a bit of studio, quite empty right now, and I could explain why, but huge warehouse studio. Anyway, I'm usually walking back and forth to the studio, but we're all stopped from doing things that we want to do. And I became aware that I, and many people I was speaking to, were having dreams about being stopped from doing something, kind of anxiety dreams. In my case, because I'm such a traveller, not being able to get a plane, missing it. In other people's cases, it's not being able to find something or find someone or get their way out of something or whatever. And that really fascinated me. So I did this it's a folding concertina book. It's not this, but since I'm here, I can show you. There's one. That's not it, but concertina like that. And this was a large book that was acquired by the State Library of New South Wales, which is I think it's currently on display. Was recently with a big exhibition, or an exhibition where they've got a big picture of my work about the pandemic and linking it with the pandemic from 100 years ago. Anyway, it was that it made my friends think of asking me if I would paint images from that on their wall in Newtown. And I thought, well, it's not very cheery, having nightmare kind of images. And so I thought, well, what about women's empowerment? So all of that sort of indirectly came out of, you know, Dreams in Dark Times, which is the name of another folding book I've done of that sort of thing.
Mm. And that's a nice segue to your beautiful work, which is on display as part of the National Works on Paper, Ladders to the Sky, which was made in 2008.
Yes.
So it's a couple of years old now, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that actual work that we've got on display.
Yes. Yes, and of course that is another folding book. It's a thing I do a lot. I don't actually make the books. People often ask me that. I can't make anything, so I don't do any of that. It's only painting and drawing. But I love that particular kind of medium of a long concertina book, sometimes very long, like one that I've got on display at the moment in me, which is 7 meters. But this one that's in Mornington, I can't remember how wide it is. It's probably like not even a handspan. Can't tell you how wide it is, but it's nowhere near as long as that. It's not that long. There's something lovely. Oh, do you have the size?
Yeah, it's about 1.5 meters.
Yeah, that's why I thought it must be something like that. I was trying to do a gesture with my hand, so it's roughly, yes, your arm span-ish. But what's lovely about those is that you can do something that's like a panorama, which is like the one Ladders to the Sky that's in Mornington right now. It's kind of a panorama. So it's like you're looking around and you're seeing this in front of you. But sometimes I do it as though it's this happened, then this happened, then this happened, or here's a whole lot of information about this thing. But in this one, Ladders to the Sky, which is done in gouache, which is actually, there's some, I've got some, I'm in my studio and there's a palette of gouache. You can see that gouache. That's what it looks like. There's a tube of it. I'm working in gouache. I'm actually working in a place like this, and I like gouache because it's like watercolor, only it enables you to paint quite opaquely as well, and also it enables you to paint over color. In this Ladders to the Sky, I'm working on a yellow background. If I was using watercolor, I wouldn't be able to, work on a colored background, because with watercolor, it's a transparent medium, and the white is the paper itself. So if you want something very pale, you just put a pale wash. Whereas with gouache, you can put white. And in this image, I have, as I said, it's kind of a panorama, and it's actually based on being in Paris. I mean, I can't even complain about not being in Paris, because it's not even a first world problem. That's a 1.5 world problem, that I can't go back to the Paris apartment. Oh, your heart bleeds. Is that it? Is that your problem? It's a very good problem. However, I do miss it. And that is actually about being in Paris. And it's about looking on the balcony, looking across at the roofs, which is what we can see, because this place that I have with my partner Bernard Ollis, it's in Montmartre, but not in the touristy bit, and we're on the 6th floor, where we can look over all these beautiful Parisian roofs. And this work is kind of about, I guess, relating to that thing I was talking about, dreams, about imaginary worlds, dream images, and a mixture of real things and imagined.
Yeah, it's an absolutely gorgeous work. We have it displayed as one of the first works you actually see as you come into the exhibition. So people are really drawn into the brightness and the colourfulness in that beautiful concertinaed book. It's really gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Actually, that book, it's a purple, the actual book is purple, and it has a little sort of logo-y monogram thing on the front, which is actually a drawing that I did, that I got these bookbinder people to actually emboss onto the front of the book. So it's got my own sort of logo on it. This is a place which in Sydney, which I don't even think still exists. And it's an really old-fashioned and wonderful craft. It was a family business of people who were still doing those really fine, beautiful bookbinding things. They will do something like wedding invitations and invitations to such and such as 21st and baby books and all of that. But they will also do all these kind of things, which, you know, is something that you really don't see very much anymore. And it's a beautiful craft that's almost gone.
Yeah. And your studio looks quite sparse at the moment. Is that due to the big exhibition?
Well, it does. I'll show you around. There's nothing to show. Yeah, so this is what it looks like right now. This is a huge space, as you see. I'm very lucky to have such a wonderfully huge space. Normally it's got stuff all over the walls, but right now I've got a big exhibition on in a Mossman Art Gallery, which is kind of like, in a way, being in Mornington, in a sense, although obviously it's not Mornington, but it's a bit like that, in that it's sort of a museum gallery as opposed to a commercial gallery.
Yeah.
And I have a big show there called Ghosts, and it's a massive show over 2 floors, which also has paintings, oil paintings and works on paper, but it also has murals painted directly onto the wall. And a lot of that stuff is stuff that was all over the walls here is all there at the moment. And, you know, it's kind of nice not to have it around and to be working on some new things.
Yeah. Yeah, or just having a look at some of those, the install images from that show. It was interesting to see the sort of murals again, but also I did a whole range of drawings and other smaller works that were displayed all on the walls. It looked, it's an amazing output to have all that work on display.
Oh, it was great. Actually, it reminds me too, talking about gouache as we were just then for the folding book. When I had my show in Mornington a few years ago, it was called Wanderlust, and it was a show about travel. I'm telling you, I'm obsessed with travel. I'm not kidding. And when I'm traveling, I very often work in gouache. I mean, if I'm somewhere for a long time, then I'm an oil painter, I can work in oil. But gouache, besides what I was talking about with the fact that you can paint thinly, opaquely, and I love the quality of it, it also is something which is very convenient thing to use while you're moving around, because it dries quickly. The washing up isn't an issue. You know, when I've had residencies in all sorts of places, including 2 in Antarctica, where, you know, you can't be on this ship pouring terps down the sink, or you can't do that anyway, but, you know, it's a problem having all that stuff. Whereas with a water-based thing like that, not even acrylic, it's more like watercolor, if you do spill it, it'll just come off. It's actually, and you just wash it all out and pour it down the sink, it's just water. Yeah. So it's actually a thing that I love to use, and I do use a lot.
Yeah, well, that from that exhibition, the Wanderlust exhibition at Mornington, there was a whole range of your Antarctica works, which were really gorgeous. What was the last holiday you had, or where was the last residency overseas that you managed to sneak in before?
Well, I think I'm just trying to remember. I mean, this year, I mean, we would have been in Paris, and I was supposed to have had a show in China. I went to Kuala Lumpur very briefly in January, February, and that was just a short trip. But that was the last time I managed to squeeze something in. But I am so obsessed with travel. I don't know why. There's obviously something a little bit weird that's in there. But I love change of scene, and I'm also I'm even sort of champing at the bit, you know, moving around in Australia, and I'm dying to come back down to Victoria, because I've also got. I would have loved to see this show, for example, the up in Mornington, but I've also got a show next year in Nicholas Thompson Gallery in Melbourne, and I want to go and check out the space, because I haven't actually done that yet. So, you know, I'm just dying to move around, and or, you know, We can't do nothing, and also right now, as I'm talking to you, it's very uncertain. But it's uncertain all the time. That's what we realise. We realise that even when it looks like it's all right, things can happen.
Yeah, and I think that's just the sort of the world that we live in at the moment. Even with
Yes.
Victoria's been, I think 53 days without a locally acquired case. But it only takes to see what's happening up in Sydney just as a reminder that it's a pretty uncertain time.
Well, that's right, because we all feel, well, I was feeling, oh, look, what's the point? You don't need to worry because nothing's happened. There hasn't been any locally acquired. But then but then there's been issues with quarantine breaches or people not being quarantined or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we just don't know. And none of us have been in a situation, most of us in Australia, if we've grown up here, we've never experienced a situation where we can't predict what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and we have to sort of plan. We have to plan, but we have to have a question mark over all our plans.
Yeah. Well, I guess thinking about that, how do you plan for the year ahead for 2021? Have you sort of tentatively got some shows coming up or travel plans, like more local, like you're saying, to come down to Melbourne?
Oh yeah, well, that's right. Well, I'm hoping to come to Melbourne. That's up on my list of things I want to travel. That's my top of my list, whenever that is. But I have this show that I mentioned in May in Nicholas Thompson Gallery in Melbourne. I'm in a show with a photographer called Stephen Kavanagh in Bathurst in New South Wales Regional Gallery, in a show called Darkness, which is it's about darkness, and his dark spooky photography and paintings with which are about night and darkness, which a lot of mine are. So those things. In fact, I was just having a chat with him this morning. We're discussing this show and working out what sort of lighting we'd like, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all these things, you just have to assume that they're going ahead, and you have to just plan, but you don't know what's going to happen. We were supposed to be in Sicily, as I said. We've moved that until this September, but can we go? Don't know. All you can do is you've just got to do what you do and just hope that things are going to be all right. I mean, it's a very strange period, and it's extraordinary. And I realize what's really interesting is this thing I was mentioning about in the State Library, where they have this exhibition about the Spanish flu pandemic, 100 years ago. And it's just so interesting that there's not a human being alive who remembers it. I mean, even someone who's 102 was 2. So there's not a human alive who was old enough to actually remember it. I mean, there would be very elderly people whose parents might have told them, but it's not the same. There's no one alive who remembers it. Isn't that an interesting idea? It's just like no one can even say, well, actually, and of course the world is totally different now anyway, and actually worse, because we're all, even though we're not moving around, we are so much more, we're back in 1918, 1920, how hard it was to move around the world, whereas now, until this year, flights all the time, we're much more mobile than we ever were, even if it's just traveling nationally.
Yeah, and it's really shown, I guess, the how connected we are these days.
Physically, how connected
to the world. Jump on a plane.
Sorry.
Fly around, fly to somewhere else in the other side of the world.
That's right. Or even if you're going to somewhere else in Australia, you're in Perth, you're in Cairns, you're in wherever. Yeah. You're over there, it's not a big deal in comparison to what it was. Well, it didn't exist. I mean, it virtually didn't exist. So everything was a big deal. And although sometimes it's not that cheap, comparatively it's dirt cheap. Yeah. It was only for very, very, very rich people.
Yeah. And you go.
So it's comparatively.
Yeah, like jumping on a plane compared to being on a boat for weeks on end to get to a certain part of the world.
That's right. So all of those things just mean that we're far more connected than we ever were. I mean, even the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you, and what's incredible is you were mentioning to me how you've been doing Zoom chats with people all over the world. Well, you can. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
So it's quite, yeah.
how about your practice? Do you think this year will, will that affect any of the sort of outcomes in terms of some of the paintings that you're working on, or some of the creativity that comes out of this year? Do you think that, I guess it does affect seeps through the dreams in particular, but do you think this year will have a sort of visual impact on your work?
It's a good question. I don't know. I do know that I've actually made, as I was saying, I've actually made work about it.
Yeah.
I've made 2 long pieces of work that are actually directly about the pandemic or about aspects of it, dreams and things. Um, how it goes beyond that, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. Look, I feel that I am extremely lucky. I'm in this huge studio. It's not where I live. I walk here from, it's all inner Sydney, we're all around Newtown, if anyone knows that, in Sydney. So it's all inner Sydney. I live on one side of Newtown and my studio's on the other side. So I walk back and forth, which means that even when we weren't allowed to do much, I was allowed to go to work. So it was never that terrible for me.
Mm.
I have friends in the performing arts. I was just talking to one actually just earlier today. It's devastating. You know, people who, musicians, singers, actors, anyone, any kind of performer, any kind, uh, when everything was cancelled and you've just got no income. And even though people like that are usually, even if they're considered very successful, like my friend I was talking to this morning, um, even if you're very successful and you have lots of things booked, there's not usually that much money in it. And
Mm.
when they're all cancelled, how do you live on next to nothing? So, you know, it's not been so bad. I mean, it's interesting that it's you kind of realize how precarious things are, but I think in the visual arts, it's not been so bad. And during these times when we have to be careful where we go, art galleries are a wonderful place to visit. You know, people should come to Mornington Peninsula Gallery. It is a chance to go and see something where there's enough room for you.
Mm.
It's not, you're not in a teeny weeny space where you're just dying to have a change of scene and go somewhere and do something nice. And it's quiet and calm and there's enough room. It's actually a really great time to go to galleries. I found that, you know, even during not the worst of lockdown, but when we were sort of, you know, there was quite a bit of restrictions. It was a really wonderful thing. You just feel like, oh, I've got to do something. Well, how great to go into these places, and how wonderful that quite a lot of these places are open.
Yeah. Yeah, and in a way, like the gallery is quite a touch-free space, so you can walk in,
Exactly.
doors open up, you walk around, enjoy the amazing art on display, quite easily, keep
That's
distance
right.
from anyone else. So yeah, um,
That's right. That's exactly right. Much easier than going to a cafe and squeezing in next to other people, you know, with coffee and all of that. It's a much better way. Or even you go for a walk somewhere and everyone's all squashed along the same path, you
yeah,
know, all that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. And I know last time we spoke, which was a long time ago, you were developing some projects, I guess, alongside live musicians. So actually painting
Yes,
live, I guess. Is that something that you would
yeah,
hope
that's right.
to do in the future when that was able?
Oh yes, look, I love that. As an artist, I was just saying how lucky you are as a painter. You know that for me, I'm in here working anyway, and I'm doing much the same thing. It's performing arts that's a problem. Well, you know, I love the fact that it's all up to me to make work, and I'm my own boss, and I'm creating work for various shows or various things that I've generated. So it all comes from me. I like that independence, but there is something really lovely about doing some kind of collaboration or working with someone else, which is something I have rarely done. There's something very special about that, and that's not what you normally. I don't, and I'm an only child. I need to be on my own, but there is something special about that. And Yes, I did something. I was working with the Sydney Art Quartet, where I was drawing live on stage at the City Recital Hall in Sydney with them, drawing a picture based on a Hogarth picture, actually, which was a strange thing. It all was worked out really well. It was all fine. But right now, everything's on sort of semi, kind of just pause button at the moment. But I've also been working on some costumes and things for a ballet, which, that's problematic. The ballet rehearsals, they can't really do that, but for a ballet. And I'm working with a writer called Kate Forsyth, who's quite a well-known novelist. She also writes poetry, which is going to be a book of her poems and my drawings and paintings, which are not illustrations of, they're more like reactions to. So it's kind of an equal dialogue. And I'm also working on a cabaret with a friend of mine, Jackie Dark, who's an opera singer and cabaret singer, and just an extraordinary person. And we're working on something together. But all of these things, all those sorts of things, particularly the two performing arts things, have got a big question mark over them about, like, well, when is this happening? And and of course you don't know. You just hope that towards the end of next year, we all hope,
Yeah. Well, it's great to see or to hear of you collaborating with these other creatives. Like, I just imagine just the amazing outcomes that would lead to. And I guess you never know when you start on that creative journey, working alongside someone else, like the working along with the poetry. That actually sounds really beautiful.
Thank you. No, it is exciting. It isn't something that I do that often, but I really do love the idea of doing all that. So it's I'm hoping that we can really get back into all of that, and all of that will happen again soon.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I've just got one last question, which I ask all of our guests, and it's, what advice would you give to younger artists starting out?
I would say, well, I had a young friend who was saying that, she wanted to be a writer, and the answer of how to be a writer is to write. But the answer of how to be a painter is to paint, or a drawer is to draw. You just have to do lots and lots of it. And if you don't want to do lots of it because you find it boring, then you shouldn't be doing it. Because really, you should be doing, I don't think, this is a romantic thing to say, but I really do believe this. I think it's not really a choice. If you are an artist, you are. And it's something that you really love to do, even if you can't make a living from it and you have to do some other job, even if you're, stacking shelves in Woolworths or working as something or other, whatever else you're doing. If you can't wait to do it, and when you've got any time, that's the thing you want to do, and it's uppermost in your mind, that's what it has to be. It's not really a decision. People who don't understand will say, I don't know if I'll always be a dentist. Do you think you'll always be an artist? Well, it's not the equivalent of, because it's not just a profession, it's also a hobby. That's what I try and explain. Because people say, well, you're going somewhere when I do travel, or you're doing it, during the Christmas time or something. Will you have a break? And I think, well, what am I going to do? Lie down? I mean, what am I going to do? Yes, I do it to live. I live entirely from painting, but it's also my hobby. I also do it for fun as well. So I'm very lucky that I'm in a situation where it's both. So my advice is, if you are someone who really does love it, then just do as much of it as you can, and don't worry about spending lots of money on expensive materials. Even if you're drawing on cheap, crappy paper with the worst materials, you're better to do lots than to spend lots of money and be precious. It's quantity. The more you do, the more you learn. And that cliche of 10,000 hours or something is true. It's the same with anything. To be good at anything, because everything I do is I know is the ancestor of all the other things that have gone before. You know, so when people ask a question, most common question you get asked as an artist is, how long did it take? But it's kind of irrelevant because, first of all, I don't usually know because I start and stop and I'm working on other things at the same time. But even if I somehow weirdly clocked in and measured how long it took me, which I never would, but if I did, it's still not relevant because it's only, I have to count all the other years and years and years of stuff which is behind it, which is why you need to do lots.
Yeah.
And you need to enjoy it. It should be something you like to do. Do something you like. Don't think, I better do this because this is what I think they want. Do something that interests you.
Yeah. Oh, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much. I'm sure people will love to hear that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me today. It's been really great to speak to you again and to see into your.
Thanks, Danny.
Really, really wonderful that you're part of National Works on Paper. Yeah, it's a beautiful show and your work's a real standout. One of the first works you see. So thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping sometime I can come and see it. Thank you.
Okay, bye for now.